Gary Sands and some other boaters are not evacuating and say they plan on riding out the storm near their boats here in Key Largo. Stephanie, in the hours before Irma hits, these mangroves will likely be filled with dozens more boat owners seeking safe harbor for their vessels.
Elaine, tell us more about the people you spent time with on Thursday and others whose livelihoods depend on their boats. What other options do they have if their boats are destroyed by this storm?
So, I asked Gary Sands about that, and the thing is, there is insurance to help with these kinds of costs, but still, you are looking at replacing a vessel that is somewhere in the neighborhood of $175,000 to $200,000, because his particular fishing vessel is specifically made for lobster catching, and so that's what he has built his business around. So he told us if in fact that boat is gone, that's the only one like it that you could basically find. You'd have to really be hard pressed to find a replacement for that. So it would be devastating for him. And it was fascinating to watch the dynamic here out on the water, Stephanie. As we were out here, we saw basically what amounted to be a brotherhood of these fishermen who have known each other. And while they, of course, are technically competitors who are all out there trying to get the big haul of lobsters or whatever their catches are, at the same time, they understand in a moment like this, when you have Mother Nature and the threat of Mother Nature bearing down on this area, that it is a necessity for them to band together, as they have done here. You can take a look and see sort of the spider web effect of just this one boat. You should know it took several boaters to help make this one vessel secure, and that's what you're seeing all up and down these kinds of canals, these mangroves, and we're expecting to see a lot more of it here, as I said, in the hours before Irma makes landfall.
Yeah, and of course those mangrove roots are known to go really deep, so hopefully they stay secure. Elaine, did you encounter people that are staying put in the Keys through the storm, and are authorities and emergency personnel in place to help people that do stay?
Well, so that's the interesting thing, Stephanie. We went out with a sergeant with the Monroe County Sheriff's Office last night, and what he said is that basically there's a mandatory evacuation order, but they're not necessarily going door to door just yet. What they're doing mostly is they are answering calls from, say, family members who have loved ones in the area who are deciding, perhaps my loved one needs a little bit more prompting to get out of this area because they have young children, because there are elderly folks living at that residence. So right now, anyway, that's sort of the bulk of the calls that the sheriff's office here has been getting. But you can imagine that once this storm track becomes a little bit more definite, there's going to be a greater sense of urgency. And for officials, they say people who are deciding to ignore some of those warnings and hunker down, those folks are basically going to be on their own.
I mean, clearly still blue skies there right now, but what have you seen in terms of people that are leaving the islands on Thursday after they were told to evacuate on Wednesday?
So there was actually an initial wave of folks even before the mandatory evacuation order went into effect on Wednesday night. And so Route 1, or Overseas Highway as it's known, which is the only way in and out of the Keys, was basically a giant traffic jam heading towards Miami. And after that initial wave, according to the sheriff's sergeant that we talked to, you basically had a bit of a lull where folks were then kind of sitting back and where they are now, which is continuing to watch what the forecast is calling for. And there are folks who have told me, look, it's not going to be until Saturday morning, Saturday midday, before they make the decision about whether or not to leave. Of course, officials are warning, though, the potential there is that, it could be a very difficult slog. You've already got some long lines at gas stations, some reports of gas stations running out of fuel. So really, officials are urging folks, the sooner you make that decision, the better off you'll be.
Elaine Quijano in Key Largo, Florida for us. Thank you, Elaine.